This is Sony Xperia 1 Mark III, and compared to Sony Xperia 1 Mark II, they may look very alike, and you may think to yourself, hey look, they both have 3 camera system at the back, but you'd be wrong. This one, thanks to its periscope design, is actually a variable optical telephoto lens that you can set between 70mm or 105mm. Yes, you heard that right. It's a variable optical, not digital, this is not a toy, optical telephoto lens that you can set between 70mm and 105mm. And that is just the beginning. Xperia 1 Mark III has a gorgeous 6.5-inch 21:9 4K display with 120Hz refresh, 240Hz touch scanning rate. Has a Snapdragon 888 CPU, 12GB of RAM, 256GB of internal storage, up to 1TB SD card support, 5G Sub-6 connection, and 4500 mAh battery that can be charged up to 50% in 30 minutes with a 30-watt charger. At the back, it has the 12-megapixel camera system with Zeiss lenses encoding. Combined with the Photo Pro and Cinema Pro apps, this thing is basically a tiny Sony Alpha camera with its tiny prime lenses. In photo mode, it supports tracking, real-time eye autofocus for humans and animals. And just like its predecessor, in burst mode, it can shoot 200 photos in JPEG mode with autofocus and auto exposure up to 20 frames per second. In video mode, it can shoot up to 4K 120 frames per second in HLG mode. So I guess the question is this $1,300 beast any good? The design of the phone is once again very elegant. Matte backside gives this phone a prestigious look, but it is slippery. I mean, I thought Xperia 1 Mark II was slippery, but this one is on another level. It's like a fish trying to get out of your hand, trying to get back into the water. On the left side, we have the SIM card / SSD card slot that you can open up with your hand. It's very easy to take it out. It also accepts dual SIM. But when you put the second SIM card, you're sacrificing the memory card. At the bottom, we have the USB-C connection and a microphone hole. On the right side, we have the volume rocker, fingerprint scanner, a button to summon Google Assistant, and a shutter button for the camera. You can also use this as a shortcut to launch the camera. And at the top, we have another microphone hole and a headphone jack in case you need to share your music in your grandmother's Buick. The previous model, Sony Xperia 1 Mark II, is one of my favorite smartphones of all time. And if you've seen my video, you've probably seen that I was able to capture incredible looking footage with that phone. And now out of nowhere, Sony came and released an update that gave this phone 4K 120 frames per second slow motion video recording capability and external monitor ability, which means you can grab your camera and put it in the streaming mode, or if it has HDMI and you get a converter, now you can use an external camera with your phone and you can use your phone as a monitor. And what that means is if you're streaming, you can use a separate camera and have a fantastic looking footage for your stream. Where's my Xperia 1 Mark III? Oh, there it is. We've been filming this segment with that one. Of course, when it comes to performance, Xperia 1 Mark III is great. As expected, it is better than its predecessor in CPU benchmark and way ahead when it comes to the compute test. The 21:9 screen is not only very cinematic while watching movies, it is also very tall. Actually, this phone is as wide as iPhone 12 or 12 Pro, and it is taller than iPhone 12 Pro Max, which is actually a really good shape for a phone. While you're browsing the web, you see more of the page, and while you're playing games, you see more to the sides. You get to see your enemies faster than others. In gaming mode, it has a feature called heat suppression power mode. And what that does is when you connect this phone to your charger, it doesn't charge the battery. So the phone can put everything it has into the processing power while leaving the battery alone, which means the battery is not heating up. And because it's not heating up, the phone doesn't have to throttle. Also, you're saving your battery's health. If you're a mobile gamer, I think you should take a look at this phone. I think it can be something interesting. The screen is Corning Gorilla Glass Victus, which is their toughest glass, the most scratch resistant glass to this date. The resolution of this 4K screen is 3840 by 1644 and it supports 120 Hz. However, when it comes to brightness, Xperia 1 Mark II is brighter than Xperia 1 Mark III in every mode, including typical, HDR, and HDR in creator mode. Two front-facing speakers are better than Xperia 1 Mark II. They are louder and it seems like they've taken care of some frequencies where this phone vibrated. I'm playing a Cinewave at 394 Hz on both devices, and as you can see, the AirTag vibrates on top of Xperia 1 Mark II but not on Xperia 1 Mark III. Also, Xperia 1 Mark III supports 360 reality audio through its speakers, and it's an interesting experience. It feels like the instruments are more separated than just a stereo sound. And right now I'm going to demonstrate it to you. This is the one with 360 reality audio.
Hear me, hear me, hear me.
Now the same thing, but no 360 audio.
Hear me, hear me, hear me.
Now the same thing from Xperia 1 Mark II with the 360 reality audio version that Xperia 1 Mark II doesn't support the 360 reality audio through its speakers. With headphones it does.
Hear me, hear me, hear me. Hear me, hear me, hear me.
So it is an interesting experience. If you ask me if I prefer listening to 360 reality audio over an original recording, well, I get curious and I go to Tidal and test them out, but it depends on the mood you're in, I guess. The 5G connection of this phone depends where you're buying it from, so make sure to pay attention to that. In United States, you get the sub-6 version of 5G. This device also supports reverse charging, and I think they call it battery share function. You turn it on, and when you put your device on it, it starts charging it. It has a built-in screen recorder, which means you don't need to download a third-party app. And you can even show the touches on the screen. You can record the microphone or the sound coming from your device, or both. Now let's talk about cameras. On Xperia 1 Mark II, you get 3 camera apps. One basic camera app, the one we know that is in most of the smartphones, and then Photo Pro and Cinema Pro, where you can find the professional settings and where this phone actually shines. In Xperia 1 Mark III, they combined the basic camera app with the Photo Pro app. So when you go into your Photo Pro, when you go up in this dial, there you have your basic camera app. Also, if you like, there are some more functions you get here: portrait mode, selfie, panorama, slow motion, and some filters. Now, this menu may seem a little familiar if you own a Sony camera, and if you do, you'll be storming through these settings because they're the settings we have on our Sony cameras. And in this mode, this is how you switch between lenses. And if you want, you can apply digital zoom between the focal lengths. So from 70 to 105, you can have a digital zoom if you want to take a photo with the 85mm. This is of course digital zoom, but it also has an artificial intelligence zoom where it takes a little longer, but it is a little better compared to the standard digital zoom. All of these lenses have dual phase detection autofocus, and autofocusing works just fine. Except for the ultra wide angle, the rest of them have optical image stabilization. Now let's talk about Cinema Pro, and in my opinion, this is where this phone just becomes incredible. Cinema Pro app is a professional camera app where you can set almost everything up yourself. It's a little different than the usual camera settings we have. Even in the professional camera apps, you have to set up a project, and then that project has a frame rate that you cannot change later on, and you have to set your shutter angle instead of shutter speed, and the shutter angle changes according to your frame rate. It's very professional, and once you get the hang of it, it is a lot of fun. Also, this app records in HLG. HLG may be a little difficult to work with in the beginning until you understand how things work, but once you get the hang of it, the dynamic range and everything you get out of HLG, there's no going back from that. You can even go and select some looks. These give different feelings depending on what you're shooting. You may prefer these, or you can add something later on during editing, but if you just want to get something out of your phone at that second, you can use these looks. And the thing is, you cannot just grab this app and start filming indoors and walk outside and start filming in bright sunlight. Every scene has to be adjusted accordingly. So keep that in mind. But you can switch to the basic app, and in the basic app, everything adjusts according to the environment you're in, and you can film with that app. Just like Xperia 1 Mark II and Xperia Pro, you cannot switch between lenses while you're shooting video. Even if you pause the video, you cannot switch between lenses. You cannot zoom in or out. This is very much like having prime lenses on your camera. So you need to change lenses, I guess. That's the approach. Or maybe they didn't want to have that not so perfect switching between lenses feature on this phone. And when it comes to battery life, I honestly didn't have this phone enough to speak confidently about battery life, but as far as I can see, the battery is fine. There are no issues. It will get you through the day with zero problems. Now let's talk about things I didn't enjoy a lot. This Sony phone's camera suffers from rolling shutter. When you switch to telelens, you can witness it. Yes, you can fix this in post, but now with electronic and optical image stabilization, it becomes something you have to pay attention to before start filming. Also, there are limitations to the camera as well. For example, 4K 120 frames per second only works with the 24mm wide-angle camera. This is the same way with Xperia 1 Mark II and Xperia Pro as well, but I wish all cameras on this phone gave me this option. Maybe it is because of its periscope design, but sometimes the footage coming out of the telelens is wavy, and that can render the shot unusable. And the front-facing camera is still not good enough. Alright, I'm done complaining. In the end, as a person who loves taking portrait photos, having a 105mm lens on this device is a lot of fun. Let alone zooming into stuff, but whenever you want to take a photo of someone, having that 105mm lens is just fantastic. I love the way it looks, I love the compression and everything about any focal length above 70. Xperia 1 Mark III is like a Swiss Army knife for the people who love photography and videography. And it seems like it's a really serious phone for the mobile gamers. It definitely takes Xperia 1 series a step further with its world first features, and I believe it's a device you can use for years and years and years.